Hello there and welcome to episode 53 of Little Big Knits. My name is Selma. I am coming to you from Ottawa here in Canada, where I live. Well, I live with my family, -1, and our cat Yoda. I say -1 because this weekend because our car was rather full, so I went on my own with my son Yaro to take him to university in Montreal. He has gone to Concordia University in Montreal and is staying in residence at the Grey Nuns residence, which is a gorgeous place actually, and he'll be studying applied math this year there. So so we are now 3 in the house, myself, my husband Alejandro, and Isla, and our cat Yoda. And so welcome to the podcast. I got myself a little derailed there with my little side story. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome if you're a new viewer. And of course, welcome to everybody who's been here over and over again. Thank you for joining me every time I come in to say hello. This is a knitting podcast, if I didn't mention that already, and really it is for those people who enjoy that craft. I do share some other stuff. There is occasional crochet, occasional sewing, occasional embroidery, but it's mainly about crafting. You can find on Ravelry a group called Little Big Knits, and in that group we are hosting the Ranunculus Love Cal. So this is a sort of an informal knit along to celebrate the Ranunculus sweater by Midori Hirose. And that is still going strong. People are still into the Ranunculus, so I'll keep it going for a little while longer. It is so inspiring to see all the beautiful Ranunculus sweaters. I'll be talking about that sweater again today a little bit later on, so you'll hear more about that. But if you are interested in joining in the knit along, if you're in the process of making a Ranunculus, you're welcome to come in there and share what you're working on, or read up on what other people are doing, comment on other people's projects. So you're welcome to come in for that as well. And I had a question about yarn substitutions for the Ranunculus, so I'll talk about that a little bit later. And it's just been really good fun. We also have a hashtag on Instagram if you are more inclined to go over there, and it is the hashtag Ranunculus Love Cal. And I post in my stories all the finished objects that people put on Instagram. I try and keep close tabs on that hashtag so that I can see when people have finished a project. So come on in there if you want to do that too. A little note about show notes. I always put the show notes down below, and I try and make them as detailed as possible. I also put those show notes in Ravelry in the Little Big Knits group. And I usually put little notes here on the screen. But I know that people are not always looking at the screen because you're knitting and listening and you look up occasionally, and it does slow down my editing process. So I'm thinking I'm not going to do that anymore, since I know I myself tend to refer to people's show notes below the screen in YouTube. If you have any serious issues with that and you're like, no, that's the only way I do it, let me know. But otherwise I would rather not put them there anymore. And I think I'll just try and keep my show notes as detailed as possible below with good links, so that you can find your way to the things that I'm talking about if you want to. And also, I have not yet recorded a little video about the prizes for the knit along that we had that finished on July 1st. So that's a couple of months ago now, for the Color Play Cal. So this was a knit along related to playing with colors, color work, intarsia, brioche, mosaic knitting, and the like. And I think what I'm going to do is create a thread on Ravelry in the Little Big Knits group, so that if you participated in that Cal, I will be linking your name in there with a prize if you've won, as well as posting pictures of the prizes, so you can go in and look there if you were involved in the knit along. And also, if I link your name, you'll also get a direct message in Ravelry. I think that's what I'm going to do. I think it'll keep it a bit easier for me, and since it's been so long. so there you go. And I was thinking of launching a new knit along, also an informal knit along. And this one I'm thinking of calling the LBK for Little Big Knits Christmas. Let's call it the Christmas Mal, actually, the Christmas make-along. This is going to be an informal make-along because, for two reasons. It's a way to get people excited about Christmas, those who celebrate, and some people who don't celebrate, they may still do some knitting related to, you know, that time. So it will be a knit along where we can share our progress, share what we're making related to Christmas. So it may be something that you're making for yourself, a Christmas sweater. It may be something else that you're making for yourself, something for your house, maybe a decoration. Maybe you are involved in Advent knitting. Maybe you are knitting for charity during this time, or knitting for other people as gifts. So it's really or making, maybe you're crocheting, maybe you're sewing, maybe you're actually making a Christmas quilt for somebody. I wanted to do this partly because it'll help me certainly get excited about doing some of the things that I want to do for Christmas. I have a few projects in mind that I want to make, and I think they're all related to knitting. I think they are. But I also love to see what other people are doing, especially if you're doing an Advent. You know, it's interesting to see what people are doing with their mini skeins, for example, if you're doing anything like that. So I'm launching that, and for those of you who are into that kind of knitting, come on in and join me in that, and we can chat about what we're making. All right, so I'll be posting that in the next, well, probably by the time this podcast is up. Now, let's talk about knitting. I am wearing today the Flex. You've seen this before. This is the Flex sweater by Heidi Kiermaier that I've made, I think 3 years ago, perhaps. And I just love this sweater, honestly. It is an Aran weight sweater, supposed to be made out of Quince & Company Kestrel yarn, which I'm using for another project you saw last time and we'll see again. I ended up making it in a discontinued yarn by Katya called Fanny, which was, I think, a primarily silk yarn, or there was a high silk content, and I don't know what else in it, but mostly plant fibers. There may have been a bit of acrylic in it. I had bought it in a discount bin. It was Aran weight, and I turned it into this top, and I absolutely love it. It's really too bad they discontinued the yarn because it's really great yarn. It's worn extremely well. There's been tiny little pills here and there, but I really do wear this a lot, and I would like to make another one in Quince & Company Kestrel. I just haven't gotten to that yet, because anybody who watches the podcast knows I've got a lot going on as far as knitting goes and yarns that I have already. But yeah, I definitely want to make another one of these because I wear it a lot. And I also haven't been able to settle on a color because I always end up gravitating towards, you know, a pale gray blue. And I keep thinking, no, you got to get out of that zone because I've already got one in that color. So I'm thinking about a bright blue possibly, or a burgundy. Haven't quite decided, but that is what I'm wearing today. I'll just stand up quickly so you get a look at some of the details there. It's got some shaping done there. It's knit in a very unusual construction, but it's just a really easy wearing sweater, and it fits nicely and looks good with, I think I've even worn it with skirts actually, and it looks good with that. And I just love the details in it. Very unusual construction. You really have to trust the designer on this one. I think after making the first one, you may be able to modify some stuff, but I really, I had some moments of stress actually in making this sweater, because I was like, what is going on here? But it turned out great. So highly recommend it. All right, finished objects. One finished object I cannot show you, so I will post a picture here of the cute little is the operative word, top, the Ripple top by Jessie May Designs. not the ripple top, it's the ripple tank, because she actually does have a ripple top. And I made this for my friend's daughter. She loves to wear little stuff. She's teeny weeny. And I thought, you know, I have this yarn that I think would look really great on her. And it just all came together, and I cast it on and I finished it and I gave it to her before she went off to university. And I made it. And as you can see, I've still got, I haven't weighed this, but I'm gonna say I have at least half the skein, if not more. I really should weigh it. Maybe what I'll do is weigh it after and put it down here, because it really didn't take up a whole lot of yarn. I made the second size in the pattern. I was going to make the first size because she really is a very teeny weeny person. But I decided to go down a needle size so that the fabric would be a little bit more opaque, and so I went up a size in the pattern, and it turned out great. The one thing I noticed though, because it felt like I made it longer than was called for in the pattern, but when you stretch it out, it totally shrinks up. So I thought it would go a little further down on her body. So if I make it again, and it's definitely a possibility that I'll make it again, because I had somebody else go, that's really nice. So I might make it for her as well. I'll definitely make it even longer, knowing that, you know, it'll come down a little bit on the body. So this is the Malabrigo sock in the terracotta colorway, a gorgeous orange colorway. And yeah, that was a really, really fun knit. I definitely recommend it. It's well designed, well written out pattern. You know, it doesn't take up a whole lot of yarn. And I actually think that if you made it long, it could be, you know, even like an undershirt during the winter to keep you warm. It doesn't have to necessarily be something that you wear as a top itself. So, or underneath, you know, underneath a shirt, or like, I just think there's so many ways of wearing it. So yeah, super duper fun pattern. Highly recommend it. That is actually the second thing I've made by Jessie May this summer, because the outline tee that I showed you last episode that I made linen, that was also one of her designs. So she's just coming out with some really great, simple, but really nice, nice designs to wear. So really great. So that was finished object number 1. I'm drinking my green tea out of this lovely cup that Knit Swag had given me. And I know she had given us a coupon code at one point, and some of you also got these, but if you're interested, I'm sure she still has mugs in her shop, and I'll link that below, of course. The other thing that I have finished, and I will be gifting, it's also another gift, is this Ranunculus sweater. This is so incredibly beautiful. Every time I knit a ranunculus, I think I can't get more beautiful than this. And I honestly, I think this, the stitch definition on this is so incredibly beautiful. Which makes me think that, you know, it is nice in a solid color because you really get to see the stitches. If you do it in a variegated or tonal color, you lose a little bit of that. And I've made it in those types of yarns, and I like it equally. But it certainly looks very crisp this way. So this was made out of the Barocco Remix Light, which was a mixed fiber sweater. And I realize I don't have the yarn ball here with me, but it'll be, the link to the yarn will be below. I really enjoyed this yarn, actually. It took about a ball and 0.7 of the second ball. So like my other ranunculus sweaters, this took probably about 750 yards of the main color and 750 yards of the mohair. And I used the Biche et Bûche silk mohair, which I had gotten from Farm to Cable Yarns online. And the Barocco Remix came from, is it called Art of Yarn? No, the Stash Lounge. Sorry, I got from the Stash Lounge. So yeah, really, really beautiful. I think my friend is going to be extremely happy. I really loved making this. So this is Ranunculus number 5. And I feel like we need a song to go with that, like the Mambo number 5. Not my last. Definitely, that's probably it for this year, unless somebody else, I decide to make one for somebody else as a gift. But I still haven't worn my last one that I made because it was too warm. I finished it in the spring, but I'm looking forward to wearing it. I made an olive green one, and the oatmeal colored one I wear a lot because it's actually an alpaca cotton and it's quite light. So when it was even cool, well, we didn't have a very cool summer, but the couple of times that it was cooler in the summer, I wore it over a t-shirt. This one will be a lovely, well, actually this will be a fall, winter and spring version. It'll be very nice because the Barocco remix has, I think it has some cotton in it. It has some, it's recycled fibers. So it's got a whole bunch of different things in it. So yeah, so a couple of notes on this. I don't do the twisted rib, the knit through the back loop rib. I just do a regular rib. I also do a long tail cast on. So that's something that sometimes the cast on that's in the pattern can be a bit intimidating for people. You can just do a long tail cast on. I won't tell you how many I cast on because I don't want to give away the pattern, but I do a certain number of stitches and then I increase in the first round after the ribbing. I follow the yoke to a T. This time I did ribbing instead of the I-cord on the sleeves, and this is kind of a 3/4 length sleeve. I usually knit this about, I think it's about 11 inches, 10.5 inches long, and that's that. It's great because the sweater is really quite short, but you really can make it longer. You could make it into a dress if you wanted to. You could just keep on going and turn it into a tunic, which is not a bad idea. So there you go. Ranunculus number 5 to be given away to my friend, perhaps even today. So next on the needles, I'll show you what I have in this glorious bag by Harrington Bags. It's been in here for a while. I think this may be the 3rd time you've seen it. This beautiful, beautiful bag, and I'll link the shop down below as well, is the Elorie, which I have been knitting on. Not as much because I was trying to finish the ripple tee as well as the Ranunculus to be able to get them off my needles and give them to their recipients. I am just at the point, and it's quite messy, where I have separated for the sleeves on this sweater. And this has been, it's been an interesting sweater. It's the actual stitch pattern on here is really quite easy. It's slip stitches on the outside rather than keeping the yarn behind. You keep the yarn in front and it creates this beautiful patterning. I had already separated for the sleeves and the body and started knitting, and then realized I hadn't followed the instructions and I was supposed to be doing something completely different, and my numbers weren't right. So I pulled back and I just did it again. So I will continue on with this and then try it on after a couple of inches of knitting. I still have one last segment of the slip stitch pattern to do, and then once I finish that, I'm going to try it on and make sure that it's good. I was worried that it was too big, but I did try it on at one point and it seemed to be fine. But yeah, I'm looking forward to having this. And although this is made out of Quince & Company Kestrel in their Yarrow colorway, it's a rather heavy linen. It's an Aran weight linen. So I may be able to wear this throughout September with a t-shirt underneath. We'll see. Hopefully I can, but I do want to finish it before the end of the month so that hopefully I can wear it. And if not, then I'll be wearing it next summer. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to work with this yarn. It's being knit on 6mm needles, which is not the needle called for in this section. It was supposed to be 6.5, but I felt that it was too loose with 6.5, and actually this is, the stitch definition on this is actually turning out better than I thought it would. I was a little bit nervous, I think, last episode when I showed it to you. So, well-written pattern. It's got a lot of details to it, even though it's not actually that difficult, but I think I talked to you last time about the multiple needle sizes that I had to sort of sort through my head about what I really wanted to use. And there are a lot of details, so it's a pattern that you have to pay attention to, although I wouldn't say that it's particularly difficult, but you just have to, pay attention, and Selma doesn't always pay attention, I'm afraid to say. All right, the next one, which is over there, I'm gonna have to lean over. The next work in progress that I have is actually a new cast on, and it's in this bag that my friend Sue of the Tangled Skein CA shop, which is now open, made for me a couple of years ago, and I really like this bag, and I have a shawl in here. So this yarn that I made the ripple tank with, I bought at the same time as I bought this yarn and this yarn. And I actually bought them together thinking that they would go together because they're all yarns that came from the Malabrigo Dyeing Center in Montevideo in Uruguay. So the last time we visited, I went to visit the center. I go pretty much every time. And I ended up buying these two, thinking that they were beautiful colors and thinking that they could go into a shawl for my sister-in-law. And then Malabrigo actually gifted this one to me because I was looking at it, and they were like, oh, you know what, you can have it. And I was like, great, because it was really neat. It was a very speckled single ply yarn, and I don't actually know if they carry a single ply yarn. And I thought, well, that actually goes really nicely with these. And I thought about making a 3-color shawl for my sister-in-law, who has sort of hinted that she would like a shawl or something. She gets cold a lot and loves the socks that I've made for her. But then I decided to use this for the ripple tank, and I was left with and I also decided that I didn't want to make a 3-color shawl, that perhaps it was a bit much. And so I was left with the teal feather, I think that's what this one's called, and this one-of-a-kind colorway. And I decided to make the Kallara shawl, which is a design that I'm mid-row on. It's a design by Amba O'Brien, and I've already made it for myself. Actually, I'll go and get my version in a moment. So here it is. My sister-in-law likes bright colors, and so she is going to, and she's got black curly hair, and I think that, I gotta be honest, at first I was like, is this okay, or is this a bit much? Because it's really outside of my comfort zone as far as colors that I wear. But I do think it's gonna be really nice, and because they are striped together, it becomes quite more subtle. So this is the Kallara by Amba O'Brien, and it's the second time I've made it. This is probably one of my favorite makes, actually, from one of my favorite, accessory makes. I have worn this so much since I finished it a few years ago. And mine was made with 2 grays, a lighter gray, which was actually an alpaca, and the other one, which is a wool silk, which was kind of like grays with purples in it. And although it's not a very deep shawl, what I really like about it is that I tend to wear it more as a scarf, right? And it just goes very nicely under the coat. It takes most of the 2 skeins, but it's not huge, and it's just kind of got a nice graphic look to it. So I really love that. And then I thought, you know, with those 2 yarns, that could be a really nice combination, and that she can wear as a shawl to cover her shoulders, or she can wear as a scarf under a coat. So that is what I am currently working on as well. And this is a great little project to just bring along wherever I go, because it's very easy actually. So that, you know, goes with me in my purse if I think I may be having time to knit somewhere, and I work on that. Yeah, so that's the other active work in progress. I haven't actually made any progress on the Linea socks that I showed you last time, but I know that I'll pick those up. And I haven't there have actually been many days where I haven't knit recently. I think with my son going away and seeing my mom, who's doing very well in her new place, but you know, I have to make sure that she's all right. And I brought her home last weekend for lunch one day, and you know, there's just been a lot going on. So there've been days where I've been too busy to knit. Crazy. So I'm looking forward to quieter times ahead and having evenings where I can just sit down, watch podcasts or TV or a movie and do some knitting and get through my Elorie sweater and continue to work on the Kallara. That I don't feel like I need to finish very quickly. It's hopefully going to go to Uruguay for Christmas. We have potential plans of either all of us going or my son going on his own to Uruguay at Christmas time to visit family. So we'll see if that happens. And if not, then, you know, I'll finish it and we'll give it to her when we are able to see them. So that are my whips. Next, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my knitting plans for my next sweaters. And there's been some swatching happening and it's all behind me there. So I'll just show that to you now. All right. First things first, there's actually no swatch because I ripped it back already. This is yarn from monthsI Farms, which is actually here in Ontario. A great family-owned yarn producer. And this is their Aran weight, although I gotta say that it's a little bit more like a chunky rather than an Aran, I would say. I swatched with 7mm needles and got a 12 stitch gauge out of it, and I pulled it out because I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to start the sweater that I'm going to make with this. So I'm hoping to cast that on sometime soon, and it is the Jewell sweater by Paula Pereira for Brooklyn Tweed. And it is a sort of oversized open cardigan that has a cable detail here in front. So yeah, so I'm hoping to start that sometime soon. I think what's slowing me down on starting things is first I wanted to get some things off my needles, like the Ripple and the Ranunculus, but I'm a little torn about which size to make, so I have to still figure that one out. The other thing that I have been, I've got all my messy swatches here, that I've been swatching on is with two yarns from Alley Cat Yarns. You may recall that I bought 2 skeins of this beautiful BFL sock yarn from Alley Cat in her Harbor colorway, which this is probably, if I had to choose a favorite color, this would be my favorite color. I absolutely love a gray blue. I just love gray blue, and I don't buy a lot of gray blue because I feel like I'm always buying gray blue, so I don't end up buying a whole lot of it, but I just love gray blue. I also love other colors, but if I was pushed into a corner and had to choose a color, this would probably be it. You may recall that I had swatched using different grays that I had in my stash, and they just didn't work. One was way too light, and the other one had a greeny tinge to it, and this has a bluey purpley tinge to it. So I actually contacted Melissa of Alley Cat Yarns and said, do you dye mohair at all? And she said, well, I haven't, but I could. So I said, well, if you would, I'd love some mohair in the same color as the other one that I have in the Harbor. And so she very kindly dyed it up, and before I even had a chance to ask her, had sent it to me. So that was such a kind gift. She sent me 2. I probably only need 1, so I'll save this for something else, because it's just such a beautiful color. I mean, it could be framed. That's how beautiful this is. I could have a framed yarn all over my house. So I have been swatching with this because I want to make an Elton. When I got this Harbor yarn, that was my intention. I started thinking about perhaps making some other things, but no, I really want the Elton cardigan by Jochi Locatelli. And so here it is with the 2, the mohair dyes lighter, so it's not quite as saturated as the other one, but I will have a beautiful gray Elton cardigan out of this. And that is something else that I want to start soon, and also something else that I'm a little bit torn between sizes. I'm ready to go on this one. I just have to determine which size. So that is the second bit of swatching that I've been doing. And the other thing that I have been swatching with is this Nutidin yarn. So I got 3 cakes of this brown, I think it was called Trofast, from the Nutidin update that happened in the spring. I also got some of their Sinne colorway, which was like an orangey red, and I showed you the swatching that I did with that. And I have been swatching with this color, knowing that I wanted to double strand it with brown. So I actually have 2 browns that I started swatching with this, and I really like it with this. And it turns it into a sort of a richer brown. And then I got some of this Knitting for Olive mohair. I think this is the hazel brown, which is closer to the actual cake color. Well, it's sort of, it's a little bit more beige and a bit more coffee perhaps, or tan. So I've been swatching with those 2 to see what would happen. And and I also started experimenting with baubles to see how easy it would be to make baubles with this, because this yarn just breaks so easily that I was like, can you really do something like baubles? And you can. So I have 2 different kinds of brown happening here, and I need to decide which one I like more. Do I prefer a richer, reddier brown, or do I prefer this brown? I don't know. If you have an opinion, you let me know. Yeah, and it was neat to try the baubles there. I just did them the last row that I swatched. And I started with a 3.5 millimeter needle, but I found it a little bit too dense. I really like the 3.75 millimeter needles with one skein, or one strand rather, of the Nutidin and one strand of the mohair. So I just have to decide whether I like this brown or this brown. I think I like this brown more, but I haven't decided yet. So that is the swatching that I've been doing, preparing for my next project. So in terms of yarn substitutions for the Ranunculus, the Ranunculus was originally knit on 6 millimeter needles with 1 strand of fingering weight yarn. And I did not find that attractive. I have seen some projects that have been really, really nice like that, but in the original pattern, I didn't find it particularly attractive. But as people were making the pattern, people were doing using all kinds of different yarns for the Ranunculus. And that is actually one of the beauties of that sweater pattern, is that you really can do so many different things with it. I have seen it made in the original single strand of fingering weight, and it's been attractive. I've seen it most commonly with a a strand of fingering weight and a strand of mohair. And 4 of the 5 sweaters that I've made have used that. Actually, my first one used a strand of the Wollmeise lace weight, although I would say that it's a light fingering weight. It's not really lace weight. So it was, but it was a little bit thinner than the other ones. I've also seen used a DK weight, for example, the Rowan tweed in their DK, which has turned out really nicely. I've seen people use Nutiden, 1 strand of Nutiden with 1 strand of mohair. I've seen people use worsted weight for the Ranunculus, and that makes it sort of a more rustic, sort of woolly experience. It sort of takes away from the light etherealness of the original pattern, but it's also worked. So I think that a couple of things. I think it's really good to go to the Ravelry page for the Ranunculus pattern and click on the projects and look at them all, because there are so many with all kinds of combinations. And people have made it in linen with mohair. You really could do so many different things with it. People have made it in cotton as well, in silk. And also in our group, in the Little Big Knits group in the Ranunculus Love Cal, if you go through there, you'll also see such a variety of different yarns used to make it. So looking at other people's projects and sort of thinking a little bit about what you might like. And because it is, well, the original sweater is a 1 size sweater, there are additions so that you can make larger versions. I wear the original size and I have the ease that I like with it. Because it's a 1 size sweater, you can kind of experiment. You can also use smaller needle size. So if you're a very small person and you feel like even the original one may be too big for you, you could use a fingering weight and go down a needle size or 2 and end up with a smaller sweater. So it's such a versatile sweater that way. And people have done so many things. People have done short sleeves, 3/4 sleeves, long sleeves. They've modified it in their own way. So I can't tell you exactly what to use, but because there really are so many possibilities. I think the possibilities with this sweater are endless. And it sort of depends on also if you want a summer version and you want it to be light and airy, or you want a warmer version but still light and airy. And because it's knit on larger needles, you know, I would just say just go for it with something that you have, and you can even just start doing the yoke and see how you feel about it. And if you feel like, uh-oh, this was the wrong choice, then, you know, you can change to something else. I would say that most people, not most people, I don't want to speak for everybody, but certainly myself, and I know some others have commented that the first time you make this sweater, there's some mind-blowing aspects to it that take a while to get used to. And if you've watched the podcast before, you'll know that I kept making the same mistake over and over again because I didn't follow the pattern properly. So I'd always have to rip back and redo it. So, and I know this is a sweater that a lot of people have made more than one of, because once you make it, and honestly, when I made mine, I thought I'm never going to wear this. And then I wanted to wear it all the time. It's really a very, very nice layering piece. And people have made it in different lengths as well, depending on, you know, your comfort zone. I actually think that the cropped look really works nicely as a layering piece. So I've enjoyed making it. It's not super cropped, but more cropped than most of my sweaters. So I've made it about 10 or 11 inches, as I mentioned earlier, whereas I think the original pattern is 8 inches. So yeah, so I would say that it is a great pattern to experiment with because it's quite forgiving and it really looks good in a variety of yarns. So yeah, so if you're contemplating the Ranunculus but are unsure of what to use, I would say check out the Ravelry project page for that sweater and see all the different makes. So there you go. One thing I also want to show you in terms of acquisition is I told you last time when I showed you my acquisitions that something I haven't been to pick it up yet. Was this yarn which came from Filature Le Mieux. I showed you a couple of episodes ago some sock yarn that a friend had sent me from Filature Le Mieux, which is actually more of a wholesaler. And they are somewhere in Quebec. And I had ordered, a friend of mine, Holly and I had ordered some together, and I had to go pick it up. So this is the DK worsted weight. They just call it their 2-ply in their, I think they called it their English yarns or British yarns. And they milled it themselves, and I'm not sure where the fibers actually come from, but this is very rustic yarn. I'm going to tell you that. Super rustic, extremely reasonably priced. Like, I think each one of these was $3.50 Canadian. So I got 10 of skeins for $35. And I am planning on making an outerwear cardigan out of this, because this is almost loofah rough. It's definitely very, very rustic. I think I'm going to swatch with one of these and wash it and see how the yarn behaves after it's washed. But it's definitely very rustic, quite rough yarn, I would say. So I'm thinking about some sort of an outerwear, you know, fall coat. So something that would close, that would have a nice collar on it, that I could wear out in the fall. So that's what I'm thinking about for this. And I'll just finish the episode today talking about some of the books that I've read, because I haven't talked about books for a long time. So what have I read over the last few months? So you'll remember that I read, maybe you will, maybe you won't, a few months ago, well, was it last year? I read My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. And I didn't like it very much. I thought it was poorly translated. I really struggled to get the characters. I didn't understand the context. I just really had a hard time with that book. And then a friend suggested that I watch the production of that first book, which was a mini series produced in Italy, and I watched it. I got it out of the library, actually. And it was really good and really helped me to understand set the scene of Naples at that time. And I actually really liked it. And then suddenly I was like, I want to read the next book now. So I went and read the second book, which is The Story of a New Name. And there was also a video production of that second book as well. And I went and watched it afterwards too. And that motivated me then to read the third book. There's still a fourth book, and I thought I'll take a break for a while. The third book was called Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay. And I have to say I've really gotten into the story. The video versions really helped me to, especially after the first one, really helped me to understand. The characters are unusual. I would say that part of the struggle with it was that none of them are very likable. Even the main protagonist, she is guarded in ways that are kind of annoying. And then the other protagonist is impulsive in annoying ways. They're not very likable, and I don't completely understand their friendship. They're slightly obsessed with one another, and I find it a little weird. But I'm also really drawn now into the story because it really is very much about women coming into their own, and there's a real feminist sort of thing going through it, as well as you know, about people trying to make it and trying to, struggling to make it, and a lot of the political stuff that was happening at the time in Italy in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. You know, and the struggle between the fascists and the communists, and that's all woven in there as well as the undercurrent of the mafia. And I actually really enjoy that part of it a lot. More than the friendship between these two women, which I find very odd. It certainly isn't like any friendships I have. I'm really grateful for that, because I just think, you know, it would be very weird to have friendships like that. I don't quite get it, but it's very curious at the same time. And so, yeah, so I've enjoyed those books in the end a lot. And we'll listen to, because that's the way I tend to read the books, as I listen to them. I'll listen to the last one probably sometime in the near future. I also listened to the book Watching You by Lisa Jewell. She's a great mystery writer, and that was another one of her books. It was very, very good. Yeah, it was great. I do still think that my favorite book by her is Invisible Girl. I really, really enjoyed that one a lot, but I've enjoyed all her books. I also read or listened to Frenchman's Creek by Daphne DuMaurier. So I've now listened to 4 of her books. Rebecca, My Cousin Rachel. Oh dear, what was that one? I've forgotten the name of the 4th book. And Frenchman's Creek. Darn it, what was it? And I didn't write it down because I thought I would remember. Oh, it's getting really dark outside, I'm afraid. I think we're gonna have a storm. And I'd have to say that my favorite book is probably My Cousin Rachel of hers. And I also really enjoyed Rebecca. The other 2 I enjoyed less so. Frenchman's Creek, I mean, it was very entertaining, but it's a little bit strange, because it's about this woman who joins the pirates, essentially, and she's a wealthy woman who just kind of like just leaves her family and joins these pirates. And there was something just so unplausible about it, that you would just abandon your family just like that. Now, I think that this was written at a time when Daphne DuMaurier was probably having some fantasies about escaping from her family life. She was in a situation, I think, where, she was sort of forced to be with her children all the time and didn't have, I think her husband was away, and I read some reviews about it, and quite a while ago, so I may not be saying this very eloquently, but I think it was a reflection of what she was experiencing in her inner world. And so she wrote this book that was very much an escapist book in that way. I also read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. This is an older book, and he was a psychiatrist, and he wrote this book that was about his experience in the concentration camps. So he was a Holocaust survivor, and the book is divided into 2 sections. And the first section is really observations about and his experience in the concentration camps. And the second part is really about this type of therapy that he does. Now we're having like pretty serious storm out there, so if you can actually hear it, but it's really dark, so I'm just going to keep on going if you don't mind. The first part of the book was really amazing, about his experiences in the concentration camp, which is a harrowing experience, but his observations about humanity was what was really, really interesting about it. And oddly, I was listening to that when my mother was in the hospital earlier in the spring. But it was almost like I needed to listen to something that had that depth to it. And I just really loved that first part of the book. The second part of the book, he lost me. It was all about the therapy, and it got very intellectual and philosophical, and that just wasn't what I wanted to hear at that point. So I never actually finished the book. Another book that I started listening to at around the same time was Cast Off by Stephanie Pearl-McFee. You may know her. She is an important figure. She's the yarn harlot, an important figure in our knitting community. And she's got a couple of older books that are just little vignettes and stories about knitting and about being a knitter, and they're quite comical. And I haven't finished the book, but it was very entertaining. And I'll finish it at some point. I'll probably listen to little bits here and there when I'm in the mood for something like that. But because I do spend a lot of my time knitting and even talking about knitting with friends, I don't necessarily want to listen to books about knitting as well. But it's great. It's really well written, and she's quite comical. And now I am reading a book by an Indigenous writer. I am about 2/3 through. The book is called Moon of the Crusted Snow, and the author's name is Waubshegig Rice. And I believe he's a journalist, a Canadian writer, and the book is set here in Ontario. And I'm going to reserve judgment. It's his, for now, because I haven't finished the book. It's his first novel, and so far I've been kind of like, not sure how much I'm really enjoying it, but I'm curious to see where it goes as well, so I'll tell you more about that next time. So I think that just about encompasses everything that I've read. I hope I haven't forgotten anything. If I have, I'll tell you about it another time. But that is essentially what I have been reading over the last few months. And I'll talk about the patterns that have come into my life next time. I'll get myself good and organized for that and share that with you. So that pretty much concludes what I'll be sharing with you today. Summer has ended, and the kids are, well, Yaro's in Montreal. Ilo will be starting school this week, grade 10. And summer was a great summer. Couple of trips to Montreal, and by the way, I did not go to Espace Pico this time because they were closed on Sunday when I would have had time to go. We had a great cottage stay. We had just some really lovely times this summer, and some wonderful outings, and it was a very hot summer. I had some great swims also at Meech Lake. And this coming weekend, I'm hoping to go to a friend's cottage, and hopefully we'll have still some good weather for swimming, because if I could swim every day in a lake, I absolutely would love it. So you will have seen some footage from that, as well as some yarn store footage from Wabi-Sabi, where I went again recently and just took some footage of what was happening in the store at this time. So I'll leave you with those, and I'll catch up with you again next time, and hopefully I'll have finished the Elorie at that point, or at least be very close to finishing it. And let's see which one of those 3 swatches I'll have cast on. See you next time. Bye-bye. Hello there. Just one little quick note that I totally forgot to tell you about our going to Toronto. My son Yado and I went to Toronto, and so you'll be seeing some footage of that now, just so you know.
The stars have come in close just to see you, I suppose, and they're a-gleaming. You must be dreaming, and the sun has said goodbye with a twinkle in his eye. He's left the ocean with sweet emotion. We go and the moon is looking down on the sleepy side of town, and he's so lonely. I love you only. I love you only. All the birds have taken flight. It's their favorite time of night, when they can hear you from somewhere near you. And the palm trees try to bend to be closer to their friends. They're made of magic. Reach out and grab it. We go dancing in the rain, riding on a midnight train, away so slowly. And the moon is looking down on the sleepy side of town, and he's so lonely.